Hi, I'm Dr. Galliano, your instructor for SEC 3302 Advanced Information Systems Security. This is our Unit 4 live session number 2 for the course. And in this session, I'll cover the material in about 40 minutes, so let's go ahead and get started. So for live session number 2, we are roughly halfway there. You're about halfway through the course. So this is a good time to revisit our course purpose and outcomes. So in review, remember that the course is designed to provide you an understanding of intrusion detection practices in the context of organizational security. You should be becoming aware of procedures for maintaining information assurance as well as analyzing data traffic and determining anomalies or other dangerous to security practices. Now, the outcomes in this course, there are 5. Analyzing access controls used to secure information systems. Examining encryption types used for physical security. Protections. Preparing vulnerability assessments related to information system security. Evaluating the use of auditing tools, and explaining the importance of information security. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and transition to the remaining units in the course, units 5 through 8. I'm going to briefly cover the areas you will learn about in each of these units. But my intention is to focus on the discussion topics and the assignments. So with that, in Unit 5, our focus is on firewalls. So I'm going to move over here in the course to Unit number 5. And so here you can see the welcome message in Unit 5 and the various other components of the course. So we really had 2 main outcomes for Unit 5. First one was analyze access controls used to secure information systems. And that's primarily in the context of intrusion detection systems and firewalls. And then number 2, evaluate the use of auditing tools. And that is in the context of identifying information discovered during an audit and the common types and uses of various auditing tools. Now, Unit 5 is aligned to Chapter 6 in our textbook, Firewalls, and you were asked to review a Professor Messer video on firewalls aligned to the Security Plus certification. Now, the topics you were covering in Unit 5 include firewall security, firewall overload, filtering methods, access control lists, network address translation or NAT, intrusion detection systems and prevention systems, more commonly known as IDS and IPS, and of course demilitarized zones or DMZs. So looking at the discussion question for Unit 5, what I pose to you is a scenario where your organization has had a firewall in place for the past 4 years. Although you've not experienced any substantial attacks, your Chief Information Officer has tasked you with investigating at least 3 viable options to upgrade your current capabilities. You needed to explain your approach, your thoughts, your logic. And so the other requirements of that discussion question call on you to identify things that the organization deems important when selecting a new firewall vendor. So let's kind of step through how you can best respond to a question like this, right? And really what I want you to come away from this session with is learning how to analyze the requirements that are presented to you in a task and be able to provide a sufficient response. So first of all, we can glean that the firewall appliance we have is likely either end of life or quickly approaching end of life. That means basically end of life, that the appliance is going to be out of warranty, and you're no longer going to get updates or security fixes. That's a really important point to underscore. So it kind of sounds like the way that this scenario is worded that the CIO is trying to get ahead of things, right? He doesn't want to wait until after, it already is out of warranty. So second, the CIO has explicitly tasked you to provide 3 options to replace the aging firewall. And third, you need to in some way demonstrate your selection criteria, thinking, logic, whatever you want to describe that as. So essentially, this discussion response is your response to the CIO. So how can we best get after this then? Well, probably the most useful resource you have available to you is Google Foo, right? So I don't know, let's go ahead and type something in here like important selection criteria. And we'll say firewall appliance. Do something like that, okay? And we'll see what we get here. So, once we've done that, let's kind of review the results here. So we got some test stuff. We get a buyer's guide. That sounds like it might be interesting. I'm going to go ahead and open that in a new tab. We've got some, looks like some 6 key factors. That definitely looks interesting. And let's see, what else we got here? Looks like something here from Moorfield. And anything else here? I think we're good there. All right, so next generation firewall buyer's guide from Palo Alto, definitely a reliable source. Looks like that's something they want you to sign up for. Oh, no, here it is here. Kind of loaded into a viewer here where we can download it. So, this might be a really good thing to kind of quickly review, right? I'm going to skip over that for now, and I'm going to look at the second one. So again, it's common with these vendors. They want you to sign up for something in order to get the information that you're really after. So I think I'm going to pass on that one. I'm going to go on to the Moorfield link. And here, this looks like a really good resource, actually. So first of all, they start really basic with a definition of what a firewall is. They talk about the components. They talk about the different types of firewalls, hardware and software, pros and cons, factors you consider when choosing a firewall. So this looks really interesting, doesn't it? So what are your top security threats? What's your interconnected network devices look like? Do you need to scale? Are you supporting remote or telecommuting employees? Do you need to stop distributed attacks? Do you want alerting? Will you need ongoing support? And so on and so forth. So that could be a really good resource at moorfield.com. So I'm going to go back here to my Google Foo, and I'm going to edit this just a little bit here. How to select a firewall might be a simpler way to approach this. Let's see what we get here. So back to the Moorfield one. So I'm looking for something specific here. So I'm just going to kind of go TechTarget. I know many of you do like this. 6 criteria for firewall. This is one of the ones that I like to look at. I'm also going to go to firewalls.com here. And so here it is right here. This is the one I was looking for. Yeah, and it is a TechTarget one. So TechTarget says, well, what platform do you need to support? Like hardware, software, cloud. What feature sets do you need? What performance, manageability, price, support, conclusion? Those are really good criteria for this discussion question. So the last piece that you'll want to do then, of course, you could go to a configurator like this, firewalls.com. So let's kind of step our way through this. Let's say we have 100 to 250 users. Find your firewall. Yeah, we need to scale. We need to cover about 1 gigabyte bandwidth speed. We're going to replace a current firewall. We're going to go with no preferred brand. And we're going to say none on other network security solutions. We're going to say no to the wireless capabilities. We're going to say no on this. And then the last step here is send me a quote. And so they'll send you that information to an email address that you provide. So, make use of this firewalls.com configurator or find another one online. Those can be really good. The last thing you want to do is you want to present your research findings in some kind of a table or a matrix. So I'm thinking something along the lines of, the 3 firewalls that you decide upon on the left, the 6 criteria from TechTarget across the top, and then you're basically going to rate each of those 3 firewalls in those 6 categories. And the one that meets the most categories and presents the best, trade-off between cost and capabilities, that makes for an easy recommendation. All right. So the next part of Unit 5 then was the assignment. So in Unit 5, our assignment is a PowerPoint presentation on an intrusion detection system. So you need to do a couple of things here. You need to explain how it works and what preventions it can provide. And then you need to answer the CEO's direct question on auditing the IDS for effectiveness. And so some of the things that the assignment instructions say that you need to focus on are examining potential attacks, identifying alarms, discussing filtering, explaining deep packet inspections, and discussing heavy workload. So let's break this one down then. So it's a slide deck. So you're going to start off with a title slide. You'll need an agenda slide. That's basically the part where you tell them what you're going to tell them, right? Then you need probably no more than 1 slide to explain what an IDS is and how it can improve security. Keep it simple. And then you're going to spend the rest of your slide deck focusing on these audit considerations. So I quickly brainstormed 4 things I would cover. Number 1, is the IDS producing alarms and alerts that are valuable to your Security Operations Center or SOC? And you could go really deep here, but basically you want a good trade-off between not too many false alarms and not missing too many events, right? That gets to the idea of tuning your IDS. Or are you filtering, right? That makes sense according to your technologies on your platform. Have you answered how the deep packet inspection works for the IDS? And can the IDS handle the workload? In other words, can it keep up with the amount of traffic that it's presented with? That's all there is to this slide deck, right? But do make sure you answer those things. What I do not want to see is a book report on intrusion detection systems. That just doesn't have any value, right? And you wouldn't do that for the CEO. You're going to answer the CEO's questions, right? So you're going to focus on the audit part, not produce a book report. All right, so let's move on to Unit 6 then. So in Unit 6, we cover access control. And that's a really important consideration for security. Now, we had just one outcome in Unit 6, and that's analyzing access controls that we use to secure our various information systems, right? So basically, you learn about the types of access controls, and then we also delve a little bit into physical access controls in this unit. So we're aligned to Chapter 5 in the textbook, and we had you watch 2 Security Plus Professor Messer videos on access controls. The topics we covered here are access controls, AAA, authentication, authorization, and auditing, physical access and security, passwords, 2FA and biometrics, and authorization and auditing. So in the discussion question for Unit 6, I posed to you a scenario as an IT manager. What biometric authentication might you implement and why? And that's a fairly straightforward question, right? You don't have to do a lot of research, but you should do some basic reading in the textbook and the unit study guide on the types of biometric access. And again, you don't need to go really deep, but you need to focus on the biometric access controls that are viable and affordable, right? So we're not talking about any really super high-tech, unproven technologies. Basically, it kind of comes down to fingerprint readers, iris scanners, and other things of that nature. And so you can kind of do some research surveying on what's out there, what's viable technologically, and then just make a short post about that for your answer to answer your discussion post. Now, the assignment in Unit 6 comprised of an assessment for this week, each of those 200 words in length. So those questions are a little bit deeper than the normal ones that you've seen, and they focus on 3 areas: fingerprint recognition and bypassing fingerprint recognition, how hackers can defeat multi-factor authentication, and then some best practices and rules for securing work areas, right? So focusing on the physical side of the house. So that then takes us to Unit 7. And in Unit 7, if I can get this thing to go forward here. It's just taking a minute. In Unit 7, basically we're focusing on auditing in the context of application security and data protection. Again, we had 3 outcomes for Unit 7. And in Unit 7, we're focusing on analyzing access controls, evaluating the use of auditing tools, and explaining the importance of information systems. The content for Unit 7 is focused on Chapters 8 and 9, Application Security and Data Protection. Again, we focus on the CompTIA security certification, and we provide 3 Professor Messer videos for you to review. Now, the topics in this area that we focus on are hardening applications. We take a look at web servers and web browsers. We examine email attacks. We look at data protection, loss and backup, and database access control. So our discussion board for Unit 7 is a scenario where you, as an information technology security manager, need to assess the overall security of a customer relationship management system. And of course, that's a database, right? So basically, you are asked to come up with what strategy should be in place to ensure that customer and order transactions are safe and that you have implemented regular data backups. So the way I would break this one down is essentially there are 3 things we need to answer. First of all, what is a CRM and what does it do for the business? Number 2, how do we secure transactions and customer information? And number 3, how do we back it up? If you can answer those 3 things, you'll have an excellent post. So next, I want to focus on the assignment in Unit 7. Now, we kind of mixed it up here, and in Unit 7, we're going to analyze a case study out of Chapter 9 in the textbook. Now, it's a 2-page analysis on a case study entitled Losing Data Hurts. So I've provided some prompting questions to kind of help you focus your analysis. Those are, how should a corporation respond to a large-scale loss of customer data? How might your corporation be hurt if you acknowledge that data loss? And as these kinds of omissions become more widespread, how might they impact your own willingness to share your information? How should a corporation decide the appropriate level of resources to devote to securing data? Why is the healthcare data such a big target for data thieves? Why are corporations worried about insider threats? Why have incidents of data loss been on the rise? How can you determine what auditing tools that might help you prevent data losses? And then finally, determine how to have a standard and sufficient policies for securing data. So those questions should form the analysis part of your response, right, of your deliverable. You need to answer each of those prompting questions. And so it just makes sense to structure your analysis around those. So what is a case study analysis, though? So it's not an essay, right? You're not taking a position and then writing about your position on some issue. Here you're investigating an IT challenge or a business problem. You're looking at solutions, and then you're proposing the most effective solution with some kind of supporting evidence. So I've got a 4-step methodology I use when I do a case study analysis. Number 1, I read the case study thoroughly. I take notes, I highlight relevant facts, and I try to identify the key problem or problems in the case study. Number 2, I focus my analysis. So I'm going to identify 2 to 5 key problems. I'm going to try to figure out why they exist, what the impact of those are, and who's responsible for them. Number 3, I'm going to look at any possible solutions and changes that are needed to improve the situation. And then finally, I'm going to recommend the best course of action or the best solution. I can do that from supporting evidence. I can present pros and cons. I can focus on how realistic the solution might be. But by doing those 4 things, then I'm going to be able to produce a deliverable that management is going to be pleased with, right? So let's talk a little bit about drafting the case study. So what elements do you need? Well, you need an introduction. That's where you're going to identify the key problems or issues. You're going to formulate and include some kind of a thesis statement. You're going to summarize the outcome, and you're going to do that in about 1 to 2 sentences. And then basically you're going to tell me what you're going to tell me, right? So you're giving a preview of your analysis. The second thing you need to focus on is the context, right? So build the context around the case study. Any background information, relative facts, important issues. And that's going to help you demonstrate that you've actually done the research. Number 3, you're going to talk about the alternatives. You don't need to talk about all of them if there are many. Just pick the leading ones, right? Maybe even explain why you discounted some of them. Maybe they're just far too expensive. Maybe the technology isn't vetted. Maybe, it's not suited to the size of your organization. Could be any of those things. Then focus on the proposed solution. Explain why you chose it. Give any supporting evidence, any outside research. And then 5, your recommendation, and any strategies that are there. And that's how you get through a case study. So with that, we'll migrate to Unit 8. So in this final unit of the course, we talked about endpoint hardening and IR, incident response. So really we have a single outcome that's providing or preparing vulnerability assessments. And there's 3 things we focus on there. Vulnerability assessment for a healthcare facility. The impacts from unauthorized access to the healthcare system and identifying regulations associated with the healthcare vertical. We have 2 readings for you from the textbook, Chapter 7 and 10, Endpoint Hardening and Incident Response. Again, we give you 3 Professor Messer videos. Some of the topics we discuss is host hardening, security baselines, vulnerabilities and patching, managing user groups and permissions, strong passwords, intrusion response process, and business continuity. Now, the discussion board is really kind of straightforward for the last unit in the course. We've asked you to do some reflective thinking on all of the material that you've learned and how you think it might help you in your career. And then in part 2, we ask you to basically tell us how you would help a new employee, a junior IT specialist, on understanding the importance of creating a disaster recovery plan. Now, the assignment is a 3-page vulnerability assessment plan. Scenario is a healthcare system of 3 hospitals. Now, I can tell you that one of the things I see with this particular assignment, almost universally, is I'll get these assignments turned in and students don't tell me anything about healthcare. They don't focus on the 3 hospital healthcare system. They don't give me anything about HIPAA. They don't even really talk about, protected health information or sensitive patient information at all. It's usually just very generic vulnerability information. And they don't score well on this assignment because that's the biggest part here, is focusing on the business priority. All right? So the parts of this 3-page assignment that are important is you've assessed your company's vulnerabilities, and now you need a plan basically to fix them, to remediate them. So you provide an assessment across the 3 locations. You discuss the potential harm that may result from authorized individuals accessing patient information that they shouldn't be privy to. Then you explain the impact of an unauthorized person gaining that access to the electronic healthcare system. You discuss the legal ramifications from an external attacker. And then you identify the regulations healthcare facilities must follow to protect patient info. Now, if I were you, I might start with those regulations right up front. Maybe that makes a good introduction to the actual problem, because that does provide great context. If you do that last, then your reader may be wondering why. So I'd recommend doing that up front, then go into the vulnerability assessment and, all of those impacts. So if you can do that, then you'll have a great 3-page vulnerability assessment plan. Remember, you'll want to focus on healthcare and the 3 hospital system that is described in the assignment instructions. All right. With that, let's go back over to the textbook. I'm going to go ahead and open that up in a new window. As soon as we get in that, excuse me, I want to take a look at the case study. And let's see here. So we're going to go to chapter 9.7 in the book. Whoops, sorry about that. Actually exited the book there. See if I can get back there. All right, here we are. Yeah, Corporate Computer Security by Boyle and Pankow. And I'm going to go to 9, and then I'm going to collapse that. Let's see here. So, chapter 9, wasn't that one? So we can get to the case study. Here it is here. So I just wanted to quickly kind of go over this case study, Losing Data Hurts. So that is actually on page 470 of the book. chapter 9. So obviously, this is a case study about data loss. And so they give us an example of Voodoo. Now, many of you have probably watched a movie or a TV show on Voodoo.com. It's kind of a content delivery service. I think it's one that was started by Walmart, actually, to compete with Netflix. So this was provided from the context or perspective of the Chief Technology Officer of Voodoo. And basically they talked about a break-in in which a bunch of hard drives were stolen. And on those hard drives were important customer data. Passwords, of course, were hashed, and there were no full credit card numbers. There's a little bit about what they had their customers do. But basically, a service like this is going to have, thousands of customers. And so when they send out a response message, there's some impacts that are going to be occurring, right? There's the cost for providing, the effort that goes into the notification, any kind of monitoring that they provide their customers as a result. But as the case study notes, one of the most interesting aspects was the fact that it wasn't an electronic hack. It was an old school theft from a physical break-in where the disks were actually taken. Now, if you think about that, hard disks are heavy. And I'm going to venture to say they probably had a lot of hard disks that were pending some form of destruction or wiping. And so, it had to be a pretty organized break-in. And so we also give you in the textbook 6 key findings from KPMG, an auditor firm, third-party auditing firm. And they go into some various aspects about, what are the data loss, parameters that you want to look at. And then, as I already mentioned earlier, the discussion prompting questions. All right, I think with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up. I want to thank you for accessing this recorded session for Sec 3302, and have a great rest of your Columbia Southern University day. Bye now.